Well, I bid you all a good evening. It's good to see each and every one of you this evening. Before I begin my lesson this evening, I do want to tell you that Miss Liz says hello. We saw her yesterday, and she told us more than once to make sure that we told you hello, and that she misses you, that although she's not here in body, she is with us in spirit. And we need to remember her and be grateful that she still is going strong in the faith. And we're glad of it. A couple of weeks ago, Marcia and Darby and I went down to Alabama, and we participated in a charity 5K run. The charity 5K run was called the Liz Hurley's Raise Your Ribbon 5K run. Liz Hurley Raise Your Ribbon 5K run. This particular charity run, this was the 20th year that they had been running this particular 5K. And it is a charity that's associated with raising funds to fight cancer and to help those in the North Alabama area, specifically women, who have cancer. They have raised in the last 20 years millions of dollars. They have helped thousands and thousands of people with cancer. Darby's company that she works for, that employs her, which we're grateful for as well, by the way, they decided to participate in this particular 5K run by having some of their, as many as wanted to, some of their employees participate in the 5K run, and also their family members if they would like to do that. And so we went down and supported that particular run. We had a great morning for the run. It was nice, it was pretty, it was cool, real cool to start with, not so cool once you started running, but that's kind of the way that it goes, but we had a good time. And as with all things in life, if you take the time to sit back and contemplate it, think about it a little bit, you can come up with some lessons from your everyday life that says, you know what, that's similar to what we have to do in our spiritual life. And so on the way home from Alabama that weekend, we started writing some of them down. And so what we wanted to do this evening, and I say we since they're here with me, what we wanted to do is to share some of those things with you, reminders for running the race of life. Just some things that we saw that we participated in during that particular race. That is nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun, but there's nothing new to you in this. But just some reminders, some things that you say, yeah, you know, you're right. So some reminders for running the race of life. Number one, when you're running, including running a 5K or running a marathon, as some people have run before, the best thing to do is to prepare for the race. I mean, that's the best thing to do, is to prepare. Now, most of you know me. You know that I've been running now for quite a few years. I try to run fairly regularly. I used to run more. I've kind of backed it down a little bit. Age and pounding on the treadmill and on the pavement has kind of told the knees that, let's don't do that quite that often. But I'm down to about 4 times a week. I try to run still. I try to get my 3 miles in when I run. Used to be that I used to run all 3 miles at one time. Now I run a couple, then I have to walk a little bit, and then I run a little bit more to try to finish it up, but about 4 times a week. But you see, the thing about running, and I run all the time now on the treadmill. I don't run outside anymore, primarily because when I run. But I run on the treadmill, and there's something about running on the treadmill that's different. One thing is you're running at a constant speed or whatever speed you want to run at all the time. It doesn't change, right? You can't run faster than the treadmill, and you can't run slower than the treadmill. Neither one of those are going to work very long, right? You're not going to hang in there. And the other thing is, it's flat, right? Now, you can change it. You can raise it up and down, but I'm not going to chance that and be one of those people they have the YouTube videos on that shows, flipping off the back and all that. So I run flat, right? Well, when you go to a race, an outside race, you don't get that flat portion all the time, right? It's not always flat, and your speed, when you start running, it's either one of two things when I start running. One is I'll start running and I'm going too slow because somebody in front of me is going slower than what I want to go. And those of you who know what a manual transmission is, so those of you who are my age and older, those of you who know it's kind of like running in a gear that you know you need to change gears and you can't. That's kind of the way I feel when I'm running like that. It's like, I got to change, get out of my way, right? And you're just running too slow, so that doesn't work. Or I get running too fast, and about 30 seconds in, I say, well, that ain't going to work. That is not going to be sustainable. I can't stay there. And so it's one or the other. And the problem is because the treadmill has trained me that I just set my speed and I stay there. And I'm flat. So what I should have done was I should have went out for the few weeks before that and ran some outside to get used to running outside again. I used to run outside all the time, and you could do it, and I could regulate my breathing. I could get in a right rhythm, and well, I didn't do that. And so running this particular race was kind of difficult because I didn't do that. When it comes to running our spiritual race, we need to prepare, right? We need to prepare. And how can we prepare to run this spiritual race? Well, there's a few things that you can do to prepare for it. Number one, you can know the route to take. You see, we ran this particular race, I'd been in that area of Huntsville before, but many years ago and not on these streets. And so I didn't know where we were going. If it wasn't for the people out there saying, go this way, and also the 6,000 other people that were going that way. But if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have known where to go, right? Well, in this spiritual race, in this race of life that we have, there's a lot of times where we may not know where we need to go. If you put it to us and you gave us just say, well, you find your way, we may not know it, but somebody does. And that somebody is God. And God has already given us the route, the best route that we should take. He has helped us by giving us the instruction manual, the test, as it were. I really like what Chris talked about this morning and talking about when they ask us, why do we go to worship on Sunday mornings, Sunday evenings, and Wednesday evenings? We can just say, well, I'm prepared for the test. And I want to pass. God has given us the instruction manual. He's given us the map. He tells us over in the book of Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make straight your paths. Not only is he going to tell us the right way to go, he's going to help us in that way. Over in the book of Isaiah, in Isaiah chapter 48 and verse 17, I want you to notice what Isaiah is telling the people of Israel. And really it's God who's saying it, but he's saying it through Isaiah. He says in verse 17 of Isaiah chapter 48, thus says the Lord your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel, I am the Lord your God who teaches you to profit, who leads you in the way you should go. That's giving you the right directions. That's giving you the map for the 5K of life, right? I'm teaching you in the way you should go. Now notice what he says. Oh, that you had paid attention to my commandments. If you would have just listened to my commandments, if you would have just paid attention to the best route, then your peace would have been like a river, and your righteousness like the waves of the sea. Your offspring would have been like the sand, and your descendants like its grains. Their name would never be cut off or destroyed from before me. He said, I gave you the right map. I gave you the instructions, and you wouldn't listen. So if we're going to prepare right for this race of life, number one, we need to make sure that we use the instruction manual that God gives us. Number two, get rid of the extra stuff. Don't run the 5K with a bunch of stuff. You didn't see anybody out there carrying a big, heavy backpack, I can tell you. There was nobody carrying any backpacks. Now, some of us were carrying some stuff on the front, but not on the back, right? We didn't put on that kind of extra weight. We got rid of all that stuff. Well, that's exactly what Lincoln read for us this evening, right? In Hebrews chapter 12. He says, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. We need to get rid of all the extra stuff. If we're going to run this race, if we're going to be prepared to run this race right, we need to get rid of all the stuff that's going to cling closely to us and trip us up and keep us from running the way that we need to run. Get rid of those things. Oh, and there's another one too. Watch out for the potholes. See, when you're running on that 5K race and you're running down regular streets, every now and then there's some potholes. And you need to be aware of that. You don't want to step in those. Guess what? God has told us where the potholes are. There's a number of passages like 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 14. It says, watch out for the pothole that's idolatry. Flee idolatry, he says there. Over in the book of 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 22, he says, watch out for those youthful passions. That's a pothole for you. Be careful. Over in 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 11, he says, be careful about the great big pothole called greed and the love of money. Be careful. Those are there. And then even in James chapter 4 and verse 7, the biggest pothole of them all, he says, resist the devil, flee. He'll flee from you, but you need to flee from him. Watch out for the potholes. Learn where they are and avoid them. And running will be a lot easier. And then, by the way, learn from those who've already run the race. If you want to prepare for this race, look to see who else has run it, and then run that way. Now, there's a lot of places I could go with that, a lot of verses I could get, but if you notice, I ran out of verses on the bottom, so I'm not giving you one on this one. And the reason why is because the example I want to give to you is one that our good sister Michelle has been telling us about, Matthew Brasford, is that it? Basford. Read some on that. Read those posts that she gave us, and look at how he ran the race. And that'll encourage you to be prepared to run this race. So number one, if you're going to run this race, be prepared for it. Lesson number 2. The race is for all ages. As I mentioned, there were over 6,000 people in this race. And so therefore, when you're out there and you're at the starting line, you see all shapes, sizes, and ages. So I'm running along there. I don't know where I was because they didn't have mile markers there, so I don't know how far along I was. But I'm running along, and all of a sudden I see this little person just running right by me. Bzz. Couldn't have been more than 10. I'm thinking, it's kind of what I was thinking at the time. Thinking, yeah, if you were as heavy as I was, you wouldn't be running that way. Yeah. Right. And then, not long after that, a person comes running by, silver-haired, definitely over 60. Zip, right by me. That really makes me feel bad. And what's even worse is I look down, he's running barefoot. And I said, no, that's just not right. I don't know what you're doing, but you need to quit that. That bothered me. I said, you got to go on. I can't watch that. Because I don't do anything barefoot. I'm just not, it just doesn't work for me. But what I'm getting at is there were people of all ages. Now, just so you know, not everybody passed me, okay? The 10-year-old and the 60-year-old, but not everybody passed me. I got to pass a couple of people. The ones that were sitting down waiting for somebody else. But we did make it through, okay? But the race was for all ages. They didn't discriminate. They didn't say, no, you're too young, no, you're too old. Everyone that wanted to run could run. You know, in the spiritual race that we run in this life, God has said that I don't discriminate against that. It's for the old, it's for the young. And you can put yourself in whichever one you want to put yourself in. It's still for you. It's for all of us. We've studied from Titus chapter 2 just recently in some of our get-togethers in our studies. And notice that every group of people is addressed in that passage in Titus chapter 2. But as for you, teach what accords with sound doctrine. Older men are to be, and he goes on to give a description of what older men are supposed to do. Now he says, well, I'm not going to leave out the older women. Older women, you're likewise to be, and he gives some more instructions. And then he goes on to say, and so train the young women to be, and he gives them certain instructions. And then finally says, likewise urge the younger men. All of that just to say is that it's for all of us. The race is for all of us. God is ready and waiting for all of his servants, no matter what age, to put on their running shoes and run. This race is for all ages. Reminder number 3. Now, as I mentioned to you, not every race, matter of fact, there's hardly going to ever be a race that you run outside in a 5K where it's just going to be perfectly flat. Maybe if you're running out in the Sahara Desert or something like that, where there's no, but it's going to have some ups and downs, right? This particular course was not overly difficult. I didn't think it was, at least. But there were some portions of it that were positive slope. Positive slope for you engineers, we understand what that means. The non-engineers, you know what it means too. It means we're running uphill, okay? So I know it's, at least in one particular case, we're running up, and you kind of got a slight uphill run, and all of a sudden you make a turn, and you go, whoop, it goes straight. I think that one was the one that was called, the street was actually called Hill Street, which makes sense, right? But there's some uphill, and when you start hitting those uphills, those of you who have run any, you'll know that once you start running uphill, you start feeling the burn, okay? The calves start burning, the hammies start burning, the thighs start burning, everything is burning. You can't regulate your breathing the way you were before, because if you're trying to maintain that same pace, your breathing gets off track because you're having to burn more energy to get up that hill, and it just doesn't stay there, right? That's not going to work real well unless you've been training for it, by the way. Those who really train for it understand that they want to keep that pace, keep it going. Matter of fact, if you're really trying to win the race, that's where you try to pick it up a little, because there you can make your real difference between you and the other people. But for those of us who are regular folk, we realize that, okay, that speed may not work. Maybe I'll have to slow down. Maybe I'll even walk. But you see, what you have to realize is that if you're going uphill, you've got to at least keep going. You can't stop. You can't say, well, I've had enough now. That'll do it. If you're going to finish the race, you got to just keep going. When it comes to spiritual races, every single person is going to have a time in their life that they're running uphill. The question is, what are you going to do? Are you going to just stop? Well, I've gone this far, that's far enough. Well, the ultimate goal is to finish the race. You can't finish the race by just stopping. Well, I'll just turn back. No, there is no turning back. There's no turning back. So the only thing that you can do is keep going. Even if you have to slow down. If there ever was a person who all of a sudden, who was running their life and they hit an uphill part, it was Job, wasn't it? I mean, he seemed to be cruising right along, and then all of a sudden, bam, not just a little slight slope, we're talking a major hill. Notice what he says in Job 17, verse 6. He has made me a byword of the peoples, and I am one before whom men spit. My eye has grown dim from vexation. My eyes are just weary from all of the sadness that I have. And all my members are like a shadow. I'm shriveling away. The upright are appalled at this, and the innocent stirs himself up against the godless. Yet, the righteous holds to his way. And he who has clean hands grows stronger and stronger. He says, the righteous will keep doing righteous. We will not give up. We will not stop. We will keep moving. We will keep walking. We will keep running, whatever it takes. We will keep moving. And that's why Paul, who also had many uphill battles in his life, could look back at the end of his race and say, my life is coming to an end, and it is now time for me to be poured out as a sacrifice to God. I have fought the good fight. I have completed the race. I have kept the faith. The prize that shows I have God's approval is now awaiting for me. The Lord, who is a fair judge, will give me that prize on that day. He will give it not only to me, but also to everyone who is eagerly waiting for him to come again. When you're running uphill, keep going. Well, you know, if you've got a race that you start and you finish within a pretty short distance from one another, and parts of the race go uphill, guess what other parts of the race do? Hey, there you go. It goes downhill. So when you're running downhill, the last portion of this particular race that we were running was all downhill. It was over a quarter of a mile long, I know, but I don't know exactly how far. I don't judge distance very well by eye, but I know it was more than a quarter of a mile. You took that last right-hand turn, people going, go this way, and you take it and you look down there, there's balloons, and you can see people, a big group of people way down there, and that's the end. And it's all downhill. Now, this is where I have an advantage. See, when you're my weight and my height, inertia takes over, okay? And so what I do is I just allow gravity to just do its thing. And then I'm tall enough that I can stretch out there pretty good so I can have a pretty good long stride. And so when I'm running downhill, I have two things in mind. Don't fall. Don't run over nobody. And that's it. That's pretty much it. Don't fall and don't run over anybody. And as long as I don't do those two things, downhill, I just let it go. I just go with it. Because I can get up some pretty good speed. Like I said, gravity does its thing. You say, well, what has that got to do with running the spiritual race? Well, folks, there are some times in your life when things are going to be going good. And you're going to be, figuratively speaking, running downhill. Your health is going to be good. Your wife's health, your children's health, everybody in the family is going to be going good. Your work is going to be going good. Things are okay. Your boss isn't as whatever as he normally is. Things are going all right. Maybe he's just leaving you alone totally. Maybe you're the boss and you ain't got to worry about it, right? Things are going good. You know what you need to do? Let it go. Run with it. Well, how do you do that? Well, here's some things. Number one, be grateful. When you're running downhill, be thankful for it. Recognize that things are going well and be thankful. Paul says in Colossians chapter 3 and verse 15, and let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts to God. And whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Do you see the pattern that was in those three verses? Give thanks. Be grateful. Say things are going well and I'm glad for it. Don't always be looking for what bad thing's next going to happen. I'm looking at Caleb because me and Caleb do that sometimes. We talk about that. We do that sometimes. Don't always be looking for the next bad thing. Just be grateful that things are going well. And because they're going well, do more. Do more. When we're feeling good, when things are going well, be more active. There's going to come a point in your life, if you're not already there, and most of you, I can look out and see that you're not, but there'll become a point in our lives when it's not as easy to do things. It's not as easy to tie the shoes as it once was, right? And it's just not as easy to get around, but I'm still I'm pretty mobile. And so when things are going well, get out and do more. Help others, serve more, because there's going to be times when we need help. So when we're up, help. When we're down, receive help. When we're running downhill, go with it. Use it. Take advantage of it. Be thankful and do more. Reminder number 5. It's really not how fast you're going. It's that you're running. It's that you're running. I've been running long enough now. I started running in 2008. Way too many years after I should have started running beforehand, but be that as it may. That's when I started. And I've been running long enough now that I've gone through a few 5Ks. I don't do it very often, but every now and then I will. And I've gone through different groups in that 5K. Those of you who have run a race, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. There's this one group that says, get out of my way, I'm winning this thing. I've never been in that group. Nope, I know better than that. I've never been in that one. Those are the ones that they say, we're about to start the race. Please let all the runners go to the front. Well, I'm never in the front. I'm not a runner, okay? But I have been in, a few years ago, let's try to keep it under 25 minutes. Okay, that I have been in, which is the group that says I'm going to run at a pretty good pace, and I'm going to run the whole way. Okay, that's what that group is. And during the time in which I was in that particular group, I would run by people that I would look at and go, you're just walking. You're just making it look like you're running. Get out of the way, right? Because that's kind of what it looked like. They're doing all that, but they really weren't moving that fast, right? Guess what? I am now closer to the exaggerated walk version than I am the other versions. It just happens over time, right? But these races, it's not about really how fast you run it. It's that you're running. When it comes to our spiritual lives, all of us at times feel like we're not running fast enough. Don't we? I was having a conversation with a very good friend of mine recently, and we were talking about this and how about inadequate we feel sometimes in running our race. We feel that by this time we should be much further along in our spiritual knowledge. We feel that by this point in time I should be much stronger in being able to resist temptation. We feel that by this point in my life I should be much more able to teach others. I should be much more comfortable in teaching. And we just look at that and go, I should be. And I think that's healthy in some respects. You say, really? You think that? Yeah, I do. Because what it shows is that we're not really satisfied with where we are and we want to do better. If we're ever really satisfied with where we are, that's not a good sign. You see, Paul was never satisfied. Right? Paul said in Philippians chapter 3 and verse 12, this is reading from God's Word translation, it's not that I've already reached the goal or have already completed the course, but I run to win that which Jesus Christ has already won for me. Brothers and sisters, I can't consider myself a winner yet. This is what I do. I don't look back. I lengthen my stride, and I run straight toward the goal to win the prize that God's heavenly call offers in Christ Jesus. He was never satisfied. He says, I'm going to keep going. Isn't it great, though? I mean, it really is. Isn't it great that God doesn't give us progress reports? Because if He gave me a progress report, it probably wouldn't look very good and I'd get discouraged. But God doesn't give me a progress report. What God says is keep growing. Keep running. I'm not timing you to see how fast you're running. I'm saying, are you running? So what do? Well, keep running. How do you do this? Number one, don't look back. It's so easy to look back with regrets over things that we should have done and could have done. Isn't it? I know that it is for all of you because I've talked to many of you, and there's many of you who said, boy, I wished I would have, and we all do that. But Jesus says, and I know it's a different application, but He says those who puts their hand to the plow and looks back, he's not fit for the kingdom of God. Now, He's talking about looking back with different kind of longings, but it's really the same. We don't look back. That's what Paul said, right? This is what I do. I don't look back. Don't look back. Rather, continue studying. Continue growing. Peter said in 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 2, like newborn babies, crave pure spiritual milk so that by it you may grow up in your salvation. Keep desiring to know and to learn and to do. It's not a matter of all that we know, but a matter of what we do. It's not how fast that you're going. It's that you're still running. And then finally, reminder number 6. It's easier when you run with someone. Now, when we got on our way down there, they had already told me, Marcia, if you recall, had just kind of gotten over her surgery, and Darby had said, well, I'm not going to leave Mama by herself. So we're just going to walk this whole way. Now, I'm picking up my daughter a little bit, but that's okay. She's my daughter, I can do that. They said, we're going to walk the whole way. Well, I could have said I'm going to walk the whole way, but I know myself better than that. I just do. I'm too competitive to walk the whole way when I know that I can run some. Okay? And I just know that if I'd have got out there, I'm going to walk the whole way, people are just whizzing by me, I'd have been like, oh, this ain't good, and I would have eventually had to run. So I just said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to run at my own pace. I'm going to try not to kill myself, and I did that. And I'm going to run some. Okay? But then I didn't have anybody to run with. There was nobody there to be my pace, maker with me. We didn't have somebody that was running at the same kind of point in time in their life and same speed and all. And so what I had to do is I had to look around and find someone that was kind of running at the same pace and run with them. Now, they didn't know that's what I was doing, but that's kind of what I was doing. I found somebody that was running about the same, and I would run kind of behind them, with them. And if they stopped and I kept going, I'd wait till they passed me again, and then I'd catch up again. Because that was the people that I found. And there was one that I found that was, well, she couldn't have been more than 12, and she was running about my speed. I said, well, I'll just keep up with her. So, which again is kind of sad, but nonetheless. It's easier, though, it's easier to run when someone is running with you, spiritually speaking. We're all going to be running this race, and it's easier to run when we're running with people. You're going to trip, you're going to fall. Isn't it a lot better to have someone there to help you up? In Ecclesiastes chapter 4, it says, 2 are better than 1 because they have good return for their labor. If they fall down, they can help each other up. But pity those who fall and have no one to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can 1 keep warm alone? Though 1 may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. It's not quickly broken. Folks, we need to remember also, just like that little 12-year-old who had no idea that I was using her as my pace, sometimes we have no idea what people are looking at us and seeing what we're doing and how we're running and saying, I'm running with them. I'm running with them. They may know the things that we're going through and say, he's still running. He's still trying. I can still try. Look at what he's having to go through, and yet he's still pushing. I can push. Does that not give you encouragement? It does me. When I see what other people are going through and how hard it is for them, and then I can say, there's no reason for me to stop. Why should I stop? But I'll warn you, that also means we need to be careful because we can be a hindrance. Because one of the other things that I've noticed about these 5Ks is you start running them, and you start running down through there, and you're at your speed, and all of a sudden you come across a group of people who want to walk together, and they fill the whole road. And it's like, I can't get through. You're hindering my progress. And you wait for that right moment, and then you just slide right through, right? And you knock 3 people down in the progress. You don't do that. You try not to do that. But just as much as we can be an encouragement, we need to be careful that we're not a hindrance. Because people are watching us. Reminders of running the race of life. Be prepared. Use everything that God gives us in order to be prepared. The race is for everyone. Everyone that's hearing me. There's a part of this that you can be a part of in this race. When you're running uphill, just keep going. You may have to slow down. You may walk. Keep going. When you're running downhill, go with it. Use it. Be thankful for it. Do more. It's not really how fast you're running anyways. It's that you're running. And it's easier if you run with someone. None of this is just Harvard stuff, folks. But it's things that you notice. If you'll just step back and take a look at life, God's law applies everywhere, doesn't it? If you're here this evening, you've never obeyed the gospel of Jesus Christ, why not now? It all centers around Jesus. He is the answer. He's the solution. It's His blood, His sacrifice that provides us with the hope of eternal life. And so if you haven't obeyed the gospel of Jesus Christ so that you can have that hope, why not now? Why not while we stand and while we sing?